At 15, I lost everything except the one thing that saved my life. I wasn't ready. No one is at 15, not for love, not for shame, not for what follows after a pregnancy test shakes in your hand like a silent blade. I remember the day everything changed. It was mid-March, the beginning of spring, but to me it felt like winter. I woke up with a kind of pain I had never felt before. Not physical, but something pressing tightly inside my chest. Then came the delay. The days passed. The clock screamed inside my head. I bought the test with trembling hands. I didn't know where to hide it. I couldn't even look the pharmacist in the eye. I just left. 3 minutes later, my life split in two, before and after a red line. I didn't believe it. I washed my face. I looked again. A dark, unwavering line. I sat on the bathroom floor back against the door. Only my shaky breath and the silence of the house. No one knew. No one was supposed to. I wanted to disappear, not die, just vanish for a few weeks so no one could see me, so no one would ask. How could I have been so naive? How could I have believed him? How could I not protect myself? I wasn't that girl. I wasn't the kind of girl who did those things. But now I was. Pregnant, 15, alone, afraid, unexplainable. The next day I didn't go to school, nor the day after. I told my mom I was sick. My mouth was dry from all the lies. She didn't see much of me. She worked 2 shifts. We were 3 kids at home, and I was the oldest. Him, the boy, he didn't text, he didn't call, nothing. When I finally messaged, "We need to talk," he replied 2 hours later, "What happened?" When I told him, he just said, "You do what you want." I never planned for this. That was it. Then silence. For days, for weeks, and forever. When I decided to tell my mom, I was 9 weeks in. I called her into my room. I said, "I have to tell you something, and you'll probably hate me for it." She sat at the edge of my bed, arms crossed. When I said just one word, she raised her hand to stop me. "Don't," she said. "Don't say what I think you're about to say." I didn't speak. I just nodded. She stood slowly, quieter than ever, walked out of the room without looking back. And from that day on, she didn't speak to me for 4 months. My dad? He found out from her. One day, he walked past me in the hallway and said, "If you think this house will carry your shame, you're wrong." He never raised his hand. But his words, they hit like fists. From that day on, home wasn't home anymore. It was a place I just existed in. No one spoke to me. No one looked at me. My mom stopped calling me to dinner. My dad spent more time away. My little brother knew something had happened, but not what. I was a shadow moving through walls, silent and displaced. At school, the news spread fast. One classmate saw me crying in the bathroom. I begged her to keep it secret. The next day, everyone knew. My math teacher started speaking to me with cold distance. My biology teacher stopped asking me to participate. A boy in the hall shouted, "What is she still doing here? Haven't they kicked her out yet?" Friends, they vanished. One by one, even the one I called my sister. She never messaged me again. They expelled me for inappropriate behavior. They never said it out loud, but everyone understood why. They invited my mom to a parent meeting and handed her a letter. She didn't say a word. She just put it in her purse. That was that. Me? I stayed home, carried the growing belly, endured the stares of neighbors who kept their curtains open only when I passed by. By the 5th month, I felt my body slipping away from me, but I didn't care. The only thing that mattered was the life growing inside me. My daughter. I hadn't seen her, didn't know what she looked like, but she kept me alive. When the day came, I went to the hospital alone. My mom handed me a towel and said, "Take what you need and go." My dad wasn't home. I didn't even try to tell him. I gave birth in silence. My screams were swallowed by the hospital walls. The nurses called me Miss in that detached tone. But when I heard her first cry, I looked up at the ceiling and let the tears fall without sound. No one held my hand, but I held hers from the very first second. I named her Aria, after a song I used to listen to in my headphones at night when I couldn't cry out loud, a melody that kept me breathing, like her. Later, the house made it official. I was out. "There's no room here for babies," my father said. My mother, she just lowered her eyes and said, "I have nothing to say." I left with a bag of clothes and a baby in my arms. An elderly woman, once the janitor at my school, saw me crying in the street. She said, "Come, my house is small, but my heart is big." I stayed with her for a year and a half. She helped me find a job at a laundromat, then a cafe, then as a cleaner at an office. At night, we read books she'd saved from years ago. And me, I studied, I read, I wrote. Learning was the only key no one could ever take from me. Arya grew, beautiful, calm, and every time she called me mom, I felt like a queen. She didn't know my shame. She didn't know their disgust. She only knew that her mother was there. For every morning, every fever, every sleepless night, every doll game, I was there. When she turned 7, she asked for the first time, Mommy, why don't we ever visit my grandparents? I froze. Then I softly answered, because some people forget how to love. She looked at me, then hugged me. She never asked again. The years passed quietly, but not empty. Every job taught me something new: how to manage time, how to endure injustice, how to not let cruel words define me, but most of all, how not to let my heart become like theirs. Arya shined at everything, not because she had expensive things. Her clothes came from thrift stores. Her birthdays were simple, homemade cakes and colorful paper, but her eyes sparkled when she smiled, and that was enough. When she was 10, her teacher told me, she's one of the kindest and most thoughtful girls in the class. That comes from home, you know? I didn't answer, just smiled. But inside, I let go of a breath I'd been holding for years. I was never a perfect mother, not even close, but I gave everything I had, and she felt it. Sometimes on the street, I'd see faces from the past, people who once knew me only as the girl who got pregnant. Now they'd smile politely. I'd nod and walk away. They may have forgotten, but I hadn't. One day when Arya was 14, I was washing dishes. She was drawing at the table. I glanced at her, this girl who had become my world. Arya, who I raised with silence, with sacrifice, with love. She stopped drawing, looked up and said, Mom? Yes, sweetheart. She hesitated for a second. Then, in a voice I'll never forget, she said, I'm really proud that you're my mom. I froze, not out of shock, but from something I'd never felt before. A quiet freedom that washed over me. I sat down next to her, held her, and cried, silently, without sobs, and she didn't ask why. She already knew. It was the first time I felt that everything I had gone through had meaning, not to be thanked, not to be praised, not to be proven, but because my daughter, the one I brought into this world through shame and pain, told me, I'm proud of you. And that was more than anything my parents, my family, or the world could have ever said. Today, I still don't have much. I live in a small rented apartment. I work an ordinary job, no fancy diplomas on the wall, no standing ovations. But I have a daughter who calls me Mom with light in her eyes. And that's enough. Someone once asked me, have you ever forgiven your father? I paused. Then I said no, but it doesn't hurt anymore because now I know life didn't take everything from me. It left me the one thing that saved me, and she is enough. Arya kept me alive without knowing it. Her love was my medicine, my root, my breath, and every time she smiles, I know I didn't fail. At 15, I lost everything: hope, dignity, my voice, but I gained what many never find in a lifetime: a love that asks for no explanations, a pride that calls me mom, and a life that was worth holding on to.